Welcome to the Happily Different podcast, where we unpack the interesting and unorthodox ways people approach their businesses and their lives. The mission of this show is to learn as much as we can from the people who weren't afraid to go their own way. My name is Ryan Jaskowitz, and I'm your host, as well as CEO of 125 Capital, a non-bank finance company helping companies accelerate the progress they are trying to make in their businesses and in their lives. Today's guest is an amazing leader and entrepreneur. He started his business roughly 10 years ago, and it skyrocketed during the pandemic. I learned he's an Eagle Scout. He's worked for USAID, the U.S. Army, Teach for America, and beyond. He's been featured in probably every business magazine known to mankind. I know him as a man who can cut a rug on a dance floor. You know him as the CEO of Soapbox Soaps. David Simnick, welcome to the show.
Ryan, that is one hell of an intro, and I'm incredibly humbled and honored.
Well, thanks for joining us. David and I were lucky enough to, I did not cut a rug the way he does. He's got some moves that I don't. We were both at a wedding together. So that was a lot of fun, a little behind the scenes, behind the curtain here. But let's start off with some fun stuff, if that's okay with you. I try to do as much research. Thankfully, you're a pretty well-known person, and there's some stuff online, and I checked out, the socials. You do that kind of thing when you're learning about people and all that. So I made it to your Instagram page, and there's a picture with you. I'm believing either a pool or a hot tub with Richard Branson. Can we get the deeper story behind that?
Yeah. So I got invited to Necker, and I thought that was absolutely insane and a once in a lifetime opportunity. I did not expect to actually spend that much time with Sir Richard. And I was incredibly lucky to do so. He is. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? There is an aura around him, or maybe that's just like the audible gasps and or looks of it like admiration by everyone around him. Like that is true, but he is so funny and so down to earth that like he takes such an interest in everyone around, right? He wants to learn, and he wants to like interact with that. And it's just like his curiosity is insatiable. So I think it's just really, really, it was an amazing trip, an amazing experience. Didn't expect to actually, and he's also kind of ripped. Like, I noticed. I was like, all right, okay. Yeah. My friend and I were like, took a photo next to him, and we're like, I think he's more in shape than we are. And like, that was a big moment of self-reflection that we had to deal with. You got you got
to deal with that. So that was that. It's interesting though, because you say he has an aura about him, but then I like what you said just after that, which was whether it's him or the people. I oftentimes I haven't had as many lucky experiences like that, but I've had a few times where you meet some celebrity or some high level CEO or whatever it might be, and as we all know, they're just people, right? They're just people just like us. And I think that aura is often given off by us versus them.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's such a humbling experience when you're around them.
Well, I think the other thing is, one of my really good friends and I used to talk about this all the time is how do you wear power, right? Like, Can you wear it with grace? Can you wear it with humility? And there's some people who can, and there's some people where like it really gets to them. And some people can handle it, and for some others it changes them. But I think for most entrepreneurs, especially, those who have done it a couple of times, like you've dealt with enough failure that, you understand that one day you might be on top of the world and the next day you might be broke. So it's incredible. I mean, not everyone is as high stakes as that, right? And hopefully most people aren't. But I was talking to one of my friends earlier this week who I'm pretty sure he lost $100 million in his company. And like what was so crazy about, his experience is he was like, no one's starving and no one's dying. And it's
Bingo.
just like, and this is, he was like, I got to mourn this and process this gigantic financial loss. But at the same time, like, I have to put it in perspective, which I gave him all the credit in the world. And, he's been a serial entrepreneur of where he's had successes and wins far greater than the loss that I just walked through. And he is way more successful than I am, if that's the metric we're using. But
Right.
like, yeah, it just, perspective is everything. And, how you show up and what grace you give to others, and how you also wear that power, the mantle that others put you on.
I think it's harder to wear that power in a graceful way, though. I don't think it sounds easy. It sounds like it's just a choice, but the kind of power that you see it all over the place. I would say your experience with someone like Sir Richard Branson is the exception, not necessarily the rule. It seems like a hard, difficult thing.
I would completely agree. I think it really comes down to, there's a couple, and it's also incredibly cultural, right? So like in America, what I've noticed is that we really love people who, have power and or privilege, and yet immediately self-deprecate and bring themselves to, to the level that their audience is at.
Right.
And we give people credit for that, right? Like, there's the biggest applauses sometimes that you hear when people are giving acceptance speeches, or, the beginning of a commencement speech is when someone who is in a position of power, else like either they would not be there, right? Or like when they actually make fun of themselves and bring it to our level. And I think a lot of that's just grace. That's like, how do you wear your privilege?
Right. Right. One thing I have to ask last about the photo is, you said I got invited to Necker Island. Like, that's like just like a normal occurrence. And any story behind that invite?
In full disclosure, there was a fee to attend, right? Like, it wasn't like Richard called me up and was like, David. So
David.
that would have been awesome, right?
That would have been, yeah.
But I think, for me, I've always kind of been a yes and type of person, where I'm just like, this opportunity came out. This is amazing. Absolutely should give this a shot. And the connections and what has sprouted from after that has been really powerful in very big ways.
That's cool.
So all of that has done a lot.
Well, a kid from Naperville to Necker Island. I mean, that's a pretty solid story right there,
Man, Ryan, that was so well played. That was so good.
I want to go back to Naperville. I grew up in Bolingbrook. For those people listening, not from Illinois, those towns are right next to each other. So, very suburban Midwest towns, right? So, I want to talk a little bit about growing up there, what that was like. Like, a lot of the people that I've had on the show, they come from, I would say, harder backgrounds, or less privileged neighborhoods than Bolingbrook and Naperville, let's say. So I always ask how that shapes them. How did Naperville shape you? How did growing up in a place with that sounds funny because I know Naperville and you know Naperville, but like how did growing up, because here's what I'm trying to get at. You seem to be a very humble person that is grateful for what they've achieved, pretty understanding of the luck in your success as well as the hard work. And usually that doesn't come from someone who came from, and I don't want to, privilege might be the wrong word, but from certainly all the trappings of do whatever you want in this world, David or Ryan. So I find it interesting that you have that outlook on life, even though you came from that place. That's a winding question, but hopefully it landed the plane a little bit.
And well, I think that's awesome. Landed the plane. I think, to regurgitate the question, it really is like, cool, you came from this place that is idyllic suburbia, and oftentimes people who have that perspective on grace and or that perspective on grit, like, they don't come from areas like that. And I agree. I do. Nurture has so much more to do with who we are as people than nature. I think you have your raw ingredients, but as any listener, knows, like, you can give the same raw ingredients to two chefs and two very different things can come out. So I think it comes much more down to, who is the actual chef and whose hands are molding whatever the final piece is. So I've said this on other podcasts, and I feel completely fine talking about this, but I had a speech impediment growing up, so I couldn't enunciate R's and S's. So basically, like, saying my older brother's name, which was Rob Simnick, was a nightmare. But it was terrifying. But I think the other really strange thing about me growing up is that, like, I would start sentences halfway through. So I would be thinking, and I would feel like I had articulated the first part of the sentence, but then I would only blurt out, like, the second part. So it's incredibly confusing to try to communicate with me as a little kid, because my mind was moving faster than what I thought I was communicating. Or just my mind was moving faster than what I was communicating. But that gave me a ton of, like, foundational, hey, like, this is what it feels like to be misunderstood, and this is what it feels like to be an outsider, and this is what it feels like to have a lot of challenges. And, like, I am so grateful for the amazing public schools that Naperville had, because I was able to see a speech pathologist, and I was able to be pulled out of class and given one-on-one attention to get over that impediment. And, like, that was amazing. And I think also what's really interesting is when people have that, those type of learning disabilities growing up, what you realize is that oftentimes education goes like, you learn the fundamentals in A in order to go to B, and then after you learn B, you can go to C. Well, for me, there was no B, right? Like, B did not exist. So, like, I got A, and then I was like, oh, well, crap. Like, I have to figure out a way to get to C, and that I would like to believe instilled a lot of creativity as well as perspective in terms of, like, those who have not. Because I still remember the multiple different, memories in my life where I was an outsider or wasn't understood, or, really had to struggle through, like, crunching and chewing and learning those words. So that's probably the answer to your question.
I think so. I think you got it there. I find it interesting because we play the hands we're dealt, right? Like, we're forced to do that. And, you and I were dealt better hands, but that doesn't mean we didn't have some tough cards in it, right? Like, including your cards. So you can only play the hand you're dealt. And I loved your analogy about the raw ingredients and the chefs. So talk to me a little bit about those chefs. What did mom and dad do for a living?
Oh man, so well played. My mom and dad are saints. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a chemical engineer. My dad wanted one of his sons to go into science. So far, 0. So I don't know. Maybe soap chemistry is close enough, but
come on.
Soapbox. But they're absolutely wonderful people who really genuinely invested in their children. And I think the crazy thing is, being the third son, like, the ice wasn't even broken by the time that I came of age. Like, it was nuked. Like, my two older brothers did everything possible to, like, basically make my parents just be like, by the time I came around, they were like, hey, don't date a stripper and don't do coke. And I was like, do I have a curfew? Do I have anything? And they're like, no, like, we trust you.
Those two things. That's it.
You will do what you need to do. But
That's funny. So you're one of 3 boys?
3 boys.
Okay. So there's a theme throughout this that you and I are going to have similar threads in life. So I'm one of 3 boys, but I'm the older brother. I'm the oldest brother.
Man, you had it so much more difficult.
I think so. But I also, I've heard you talk about making life difficult on your parents. I also made life very difficult on my parents. because I'm a very much a firstborn type A, gonna have it my way kind of kid. At least that's who I was. So it's interesting though, because it sounds like your parents were very open to any and all ideas you kind of had. I've kind of read some things about various different businesses you've started. I heard you on I think I heard you on a podcast say, and this is one of those threads that's exactly the same between us, is that you convinced your parents to take you out of school on your birthday to get your driver's license. Is that right?
That's spot on.
I did the same thing. I wouldn't wait. My birthday was on a Monday in Illinois. All but one or two DMVs were closed on Mondays. And so my birthday was on a Monday though, and it had to happen. It couldn't wait till Tuesday. And so they took me out of school. I think they drove me up to like Northbrook, which was like an hour or some odd away. And I got my driver's license. So similar story for you?
That's amazing. So thankfully not the Monday issue. But yes, very similar story. I don't know if it took that much convincing. My parents were so tired of shuttling me from everywhere that they were just like, get the hell out. Like, it's just like, they were like, you're of age to transport your own butt? Sweet. Get out.
Yeah, let's do it. What was the, I know for me, I always had my dad at my wedding, he gave his speech, and he said, one of the things he said was, Ryan was always coming to me about some sort of idea he had. And he said and usually it cost me money somehow. But so that was like the joke, is I was always starting something or doing something. It sounds like you, at least from what I've read and, talked to a few people, it sounds like you had a similar mindset. A couple things about a candy stand in a newspaper. What were the first businesses you started? Businesses, quotes around it.
Spot on. So let's see. First one was a candy stand. And then the candy stand had to get bigger. And then we needed a cash register. And then in addition to the candy stand business, we started a newspaper business.
Yep.
Where we covered the exciting and thrilling adventures of Brush Hill Circle and a cul-de-sac around us. It's world-class reporting, let me tell you. It was 25 cents per issue, or you could get a subscription for $1, and that would get you 5 issues. So, ran through my parents' printer ink nonstop, drove them insane. Like, articles were pretty compelling.
Well, and printer ink back then though was expensive. That wasn't, that was no joke.
We had a dot matrix, man. Like there was perforated edges on those issues. I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot that I somehow convinced my parents to be like, yeah, so I'm going to go convince all of our neighbors that they need to like buy a subscription to the Brush Hill News. But once, amazing parents that just kept on encouraging me to, as my ambition kept on getting bigger and bigger, and I kept on wanting to learn more and more, they just kept on encouraging me to reach higher. And they supported me every step of the way.
Even if it's just not saying no, I feel like, do you know what I mean? Like, even if it's just, okay, you should try that out. I'm a parent of 9, 8, and 5-year-old, and it's easier to say, no, I'm tired. That's too much work. I just got done with my whole day. Like, that's going to be so. And I'm trying to realize that my parents were just as tired. My parents had just as much probably going on. And somehow they opened that up for me, right? Like my example to your newspaper was, my brother and I, had this idea to start a lawn mowing company, I think at like 12 and 10, right? We were going to mow lawns. But getting back to the printer ink, this was when, maybe like a word processing machine or whatever was just coming out, whatever those were. And I did a really good job putting this flyer together. It looked professional. like legit professional. And so we took it all around the neighborhood, and it looked so professional that we were getting these calls from people. And it started a long time ago, which was, I always said just yes, right? Yes to it, and figured out the rest from there. We'd get these calls saying, hey, we'd love you to help us do some landscaping around the yard, not lawn mowing, landscaping. So I said yes, of course. It was landscaping some rock. And I told Jay, my younger brother, I said, come on, we're going to get going tomorrow. We're going to do this. We get there's 2 tons of rock ready to be, and we walk up to the door, and these people are like, where's the workers? And we're like, we're the workers. So Jay and I did that 2 times. But the point of that story, other than the fact that we did it 2 times, is that, and then gave up because we were 10 and 12 and just tired as hell from doing that, is how it got that far. I have no idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, how did it, I'm trying to picture my kids who's 1 year away from being that 10-year-old, how it got that far to where I was at somebody's house with 2 tons of rock ready to work. And I'm grateful for that freedom, I guess. It sounds like you had similar freedom in that way.
Totally. I think that, I also think that my parents just I was such a nerd, and I was so ambitious with wanting to start my own things that they were like, sure. They're like, of course. Like, you don't want to go chase girls, and or you don't want to go to the skate park, or you don't want to, you want to start a newspaper? Sure. Like, yeah, of course, we'll support you. So it's just been, I would say that I was able to be a teacher for a while. Mm-hmm. And through, I love Teach for America. Some people do not. I really genuinely love the program. But what I would say is that it's definitely not for everyone, in terms of people considering going and being teachers in these relatively challenging schools to teach in. But you fall in love with the kids, and you fall in love with the families. And, being a teacher, I was able to step into, from a distance, but the lives of so many different families, and also see various different parenting techniques. And I do think that there is a healthy balance of setting up boundaries and expectations, and, what you expect of your children, and then, making sure that, they know that you're going to set those boundaries, and you're going to be firm with them. But at the same time, allowing, your kids to explore and have adventure and build on their curiosities and be rewarded for that. All of that is just so, it's such a difficult balance on a consistent basis to get that right.
I love what you just said there on the balance. I was just talking to somebody else on another recording we were doing, and that balance of, usually if there's boundaries and expectations, it's not paired with warmth, intense love, and support. It's sort of not one or the other. That's bad to say, but that balance to me is that key, because I do tell my kids, we are Jaskowitzes. This is who we are. This is what we do. These are our expectations as a family, right? We're kind to people. We do these things. We do that thing. But you also have to combine it with an intense amount of love and support. Otherwise, it falls flat on its face. And I think that's getting back to your nurture side. It's just such an important thing, man. Talk to me a little bit about your brothers. How did they shape you? Because you're the youngest, and I'd love that perspective being the oldest.
Oh, man. So my oldest brother is a professional powerlifter by night.
Is that why you're so jacked too?
The bond trader by day. Yo, I'm not.
Yeah, right.
Compared to him, no, I'm not kidding. Seriously, after this, and or any listener, watch, just Google Robert Simnick, and it's or just Rob, ROBSIMNICK, and you will see a man lifting small Nissans on his back. And I'm not, that is not an exaggeration. That literally is a thing. So Rob is gigantic and huge. He wasn't always that way. but basically in college, he just really loved drinking beer and started to get fat. And he was just like, well, I'm going to do something with this. And fell in love with powerlifting. Dan was always way more athletic than I was. Actually, both my brothers were way more athletic than I was, which is not saying much, but I mean, should give the listeners some expectations of my athletic prowess. So,
athleticism.
Yeah, or lack thereof. So my middle brother is this incredibly, wonderful, sweet, caring, empathetic guy, but also like he was such a determined individual. Like there could be a Disney movie made about Dan. And the same thing with my oldest brother, just like such a determined, smart, thoughtful individual in so many different ways. But Dan loved playing football, and he had something called pectus carinatum, which is extra growth on your bottom two ribs, which then pops your sternum out, or Thanks. In. His went in and had compression on his heart, so he decided to opt for chest surgery in order to keep playing football. So during his junior year, he got the surgery, came back his senior year when everyone was just like, yo, you can't play. Like you literally just had every bone broken in your rib and then restructured so it would not have compression in your heart. But the only reason he did that was because he loved playing football. He did so well his senior year that he then got a full ride scholarship to Illinois State.
To play football. 1 year. Holy cow. Yeah.
So like, I mean, but he was always really good at football. Like it was just kind of like freshman year, he was fantastic. Sophomore year, he was fantastic. And then they were like, hey, this is an issue. Like you can't keep doing this physical activity without potentially having a serious side effect.
Yeah. Do you, the theme I keep hearing, which is, I don't know, maybe this is anecdotal, but it seems like an incredible amount of persistence in all three of you, which I feel like usually doesn't happen. It's usually like there's differences there. And I'm wondering where that came from. Like, is it both mom and dad? Is it mom? Is it dad? Is it just the whole family?
I think we got a double dose for sure. 100%. I think we got a double dose. Both my mom is incredibly determined. My dad is incredibly determined, and they express it in different ways.
Right.
But yeah, there is not one that is less determined than the other. And they both drive each other insane sometimes.
Yeah. I could probably see that. What was the moment, I guess, then, moving a little bit on from family a little bit, what was the moment you knew you were going to do something on your own?
Oh, I think I knew that for quite some time. In middle school and high school, I kept on running in student government, and I thought I really wanted to go into government because it's super interesting. Our middle school, our public education system really allows for leadership to be developed in the student councils or student governments, or and it's trying to ingratiate our children in democracy, and that they understand like what voting looks like, and that you have to accept the results when someone loses or whatever it might be, right? Like all of these things start building this expectation of the way that Americans are governed. So I thought that student government would be much like it was entrepreneurial for me, and like it's a place where you could go and you could shake things up and you could speak to power and talk with teachers and your principal and all these things. So I thought I wanted to go into government, and it wasn't until I went to school at American in DC, had all these amazing internships with a presidential campaign and with a senator and with the chancellor of DC Public Schools and with the United States Agency for International Development and with the Army, and like all of these, some of those were actual employment and some of those were internships. But what's interesting is like I just towards the end of all that great experience, I was like, oh, I made a mistake. I was like, this is not the type of entrepreneurship that I expected. So I then was just like, you know what? this is not what I want to do. And I was like, well, I want to be challenged. I want to serve, and I want to have some, I want to have real purpose. So I was like, I'll go be a Marine. So I was actually thinking of being a Marine Corps officer. And
wow.
Yeah, I wanted to go do OCS. And
wow.
When I was thinking about officer candidate school, I was training, I was getting ready, I was getting all my paperwork together, and I met with a recruiter, and the recruiter was just like, all right, so like, this is what you're going to have to do. And I started doing all that. And a week before I finalized all the paperwork, one of my friends was like, hey, we're starting this company. You want to come help us out before, you deploy? And I was like, sure. So I went out.
How old was this?
Started helping them. And this is 21. I was 21 years old. 21. Because I was fortunate enough to be able to graduate a year early from undergrad. But within 3 days at this startup, I knew exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I was like, I am meant to be an entrepreneur. This is in my blood. This is the candy stand. This is the newspaper. This is what I thought student government was always going to be. Like, it's just absolutely connected. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to be doing this. So I called up my recruiter, and I was just like, hey, I'm helping my friend with this one company. I'd like for you to still keep my application on file, and I would like to come back next season. He goes, we don't chase officers. And I was like, So I was like, well, I hope to see you next season. He goes, I will see you if you choose to be seen. And I was like, first off, this is a very like poetic conversation.
Very philosophical.
So then, yeah. But I mean, I will always remember that on the phone, he was like, we don't chase officers. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's awesome.
All right. What was that company?
It's called Grouper I.
Grouper. What did it do?
It basically, it was not a good name. And my friend David, and the CEO, basically wanted to have students do case competitions in order to get a job. So like Under Armour would say like, hey, we have this problem. We're going to put this case competition out, and the best person with the best product gets a job. And there's interviews along the process and that type of stuff, except the fact that all like prospective applicants were like, I'm not going to do that amount of work for a potential, no. So that was the big,
that was the issue. Yeah. Couldn't get enough supply.
No, sir.
Couldn't get enough supply. Interesting. So, I like to ask that question a little bit, the when did you know? Because I think it's good for listeners to understand that there are a ton of different stories, and it's not just you knew it from the moment you were born. It's okay to know it, because I feel like I'm similar to you. Like all those things came together and you're like, oh, this all makes perfect sense now. But I've also talked to a lot of people who are the opposite of that, who in adulthood, it was just stumbled upon entrepreneurship, and all of a sudden they're entrepreneurs and they feel like this is meant to be, but there was nothing tying to them as children or whatever it might be. So I like just to show people that like the world is full of different types of entrepreneurs. It's not always what you read in Inc. magazine,
Right.
So you talk a little bit about, or we talked a little bit about kind of the similar stories and all that. So moving from like what you did in college and outside of college and moving on to your brand now, we have similar stories where we were operators at a pretty young age. I was 23. I'm not sure when did Soapbox officially start? It's definitely more than 10 years, right?
22.
Okay.
Yeah. Didn't know.
22. Better. So 22 and 23. And, I had hair. I mean, you have a beautiful head of hair. You're like a billionaire with that hair. I had hair, and it's gone now. But anyways, jokes aside, like you've been doing it for 10 years, all while I find it interesting that we were maturing as humans like very formative. Like we weren't really adults, we thought we were, but what lessons did you learn in operating through those years of also maturing as a human?
Holy, so many. I'd say one of the biggest things was just team management, and this goes to anyone who has the privilege to manage people, and I really mean this. Like you have a privilege when you're able to manage someone. Is praise publicly, discipline privately.
Was that a lesson you learned by accident?
Teaching. It's a lesson I learned by teaching, and that's also I learned so many. I think the running joke that I usually tell people is because I taught middle schoolers. The emotional maturity of most adults actually stops in middle school. You reach at that, people just get better at hiding their feelings, but the chemistry set is set, right? It's you basically have you get upset and then you have to figure out what do you do when you're upset, or you get sad, or you get, super excited and, or, impulsive or whatever it might be. We get better at handling those emotions, but that chemistry set's basically there. I'd say some of the biggest operational things so consumer product goods it's not iterative. It's not you can't be agile with CPG.
No.
You have to you got to be incredibly methodical. You have to really think about something. You have to test it with consumers, and then you launch. And unfortunately, I read a bunch of books about agile development and you can be super iterative and just ship and then you can continue to fix the bugs and all this. So nope, no, you cannot. You get on the shelves of Walmart and they will not let you change that thing. And to anyone who's viewing this, this is what we used to look like. This was Soapbox. And this is
I think I bought that one.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So anyways, for those of you who cannot see this, it's god awful packaging, and it's a incredibly effective way to lose a lot of money. Trust me, I know from experience. If you launch something that looks like automotive cleaner, yet it's supposed to be a shampoo, you are guaranteed to pay a crap ton of money. because the thing is that you pay shelving fees oftentimes with retailers to get on the shelf. But then if it doesn't work, come the next planogram, you have to mark it down and you pay 50% of cost, or you pay 50% of retail, which is even worse, to get it off the shelf. So you get hit twice. And it's just so many things that if I were to go back in time and change, I would have changed. But incredibly incredible, valuable learning lessons that we've expanded into our other brands. So Soapbox was and will always be our baby, but we've acquired 3 other brands, and we're a portfolio company called Impact Driven Brands. And I absolutely love what we do. Love it.
It's awesome. I find similar things in running a business at a young age. You don't know anything. You really don't, right? I feel like people go get their MBA and those are very expensive. I can tell you for certain, and it sounds like maybe you have the same thing. I've paid more money for a real life MBA for sure in my mistakes and in the money lost and all those kind of things. But I also wouldn't trade those things for the world. I do like the fact that I feel like if I'm starting a business today, or if you're adding a brand to your portfolio, you're starting on second or third base a little bit. You're like, all right, I'm not making that mistake. I'm not making that mistake. I've seen how that plays out. And I think that just builds on itself. That flywheel builds on itself. And, one of the things that was a challenge for me as a young entrepreneur was I was very much of the mindset of I'm a sponge. I want to learn. That's all I'm trying to do. And I felt like, I can learn all the wisdom from great mentors I had and different people. Teach it to me fast and I'll learn it. And what I actually learned was that wisdom only comes with, I've said this before, wisdom only comes with time. You just can't hack your way to wisdom. It's just over time, it builds and builds and builds. And I've heard you say some pretty thoughtful things. And I got to imagine that came from wisdom, hard earned. So things like you've talked about time and energy and whether something builds you up or depletes you. Where did that come from?
Oh man. So first off, thank you for doing the research. I feel bad because I have not done the same amount of research. So thank you, Ryan. But yeah, I think one of the biggest concepts that kind of just percolated over the past couple of years is it's not really, my biggest gift to someone is not time, it's energy. Because you can spend, 4 or 5 hours with someone and it completely, it rebuilds your energy. And you could spend, 10, 15 minutes with someone and it just depletes all of your energy.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think time is something that you don't get back. Energy is something that can be restored. But the time that it takes to rebuild that energy is still time. So, yeah, like for me, I look at this as where do you put your energy?
Yeah, I can only speak for myself on that topic, which is I didn't know that at a young age. It was just go, use your young energy to power through. But I've realized, especially after having kids and getting older, I'm 38 now, I wake up each day with a certain amount of energy. And when it's gone, it's gone. So the people, and I do agree with you that you can build it up, but it doesn't build up near as fast as it goes down. And once it's gone for the day. And you just can't type anymore once the energy's gone. You can't talk to somebody when the energy's gone. And with a family, I have to be super conservative with that energy because I also have to give to them. At 6 o'clock when the day is done, my kids need my energy. So I have to save some. And it has been really hard as a CEO, as a leader of a company, you get, as you do, and I'm grateful for your time today, but there are so many requests for your time and your energy, and you just don't know how they're going to play out. And I just find it fascinating. I think it's a lot of wisdom, what you said there. I think I don't think people understand that enough. They make it about time and not about energy, and it's so important.
Well, thanks for saying that, Ryan.
Okay, another wisdom thing I agree with and find interesting.
Oh boy!
But I want to hear it from you. Why is selling so important for all roles? And specifically, where did you learn this? Because I believe that we should teach selling in high schools. I think it should be something taught throughout life. This idea that we're always selling, whether it's selling ourselves, selling a product, selling an idea. So where did you learn that, and why do you find it so important?
Well, I think Daniel Pink does a much better job, far more eloquent than my chopped up version of this. But to sell as human is essentially just we all are trying to be persuaders in one way or another. And I think also I've been around a lot of salespeople. The best salespeople that I've ever met are wonderful, excellent, on the spectrum listeners. They can really genuinely listen to where a customer or a potential customer is coming from. And they then can match and, feed that energy. So for understand really what the pain points are and then empathize and put themselves in that customer's shoes, right? It's not just about if I were to come to you and really push you to try to buy something, I got to figure out the reason why you might want to buy it, not just because I want to sell it. So I think great salespeople, if the world had more salespeople, I don't think it's a bad thing because I actually think the world would be a little more empathetic.
Yeah. Well, especially with good salespeople that have been trained to understand what you just said, which is, it's sort of that, Clayton Christensen jobs to be done, model, which is the person doesn't want a drill. They want a hole in the wall. They don't need a drill, so it's important that we somehow learn that. There we go, baby. And if you can't see this, if you're just listening, he's showing the book there. So, I find it super interesting and something that not a lot of people talk about because we all, unfortunately, selling has such a gross, sticky feeling to most people. And when done right, there's nothing that feels better, especially even when you're being sold to. When I'm being sold to and somebody's taking that model of trying to figure out what progress am I trying to make in this world, whether it's me personally, for my business, or for my family, that is such a great feeling. That feeling of being understood. Like, I want to buy so badly from that person.
But I think it's also like when you feel like someone who's trying to sell you something is actually sacrificing what they might get out of it so that you get a better deal and or that you are taken care of, like that. I'm a big believer in the long-term relationship game, especially with a bunch of our a bunch of our retail partners. It makes it really difficult because some retailers, cycle out buyers every 18 months and some don't leave for 2 decades. Right. So I love the 2-decade relationships, especially the ones where, I think it's a challenge sometimes, like sometimes like someone really like doesn't like you for whatever reason, or maybe he messed up, like with us for launching the, previous the brand that didn't work. And like, you gotta work hard. You gotta work extra hard to try to get back. And I think, there's beauty in that challenge. It makes the victory that much sweeter. But I also think that like, if you can actually really genuinely care about someone else, your customer, and you can put yourself in their shoes. I was
just going to say that.
And you can, like really empathize with like, is this something for them? And if it's not, like, I love nothing more when someone calls me up, like, cause I do answer cold calls, and please don't cold call me, anyone on this when I do that.
Yeah. Like, we'll put his number in the show notes.
Yeah. Right. Oh, good Lord. But like someone will call and just be like, hey, da, da, da. I'm like, hey man, I'm telling you right now, I used to do cold calls. I know how it feels. I am a bad lead. And we will never use this service. I have definitively told them, like, I'm like, no chance. Yeah. You're not going to do it. And they're like, well, if we could still, and I'm like, hey man, like now sometimes I'll give it to the people who like, do the extra reach, and they're like, hear me out. I think you probably think I'm this. I'm not. Can you give me 30 seconds? Right. And essentially, that's just meeting someone where they're at. Right. It's just like, I already told you, get off the phone. Right. So they just be like, I know you want me to leave the phone, but they're like, so it's just the people who are like, well, if we could have a 30-minute session with you, I think you would. And just like, I already told you no. Like, you gotta now get to the level where I'm at in this. But
where I'm at, I want you off the call, not let's spend 30 minutes together. And I think that gets back to
exactly.
I think that gets back to what you said, which was, you said care. I always like to say the hard part that you have to tell people that are in sale or anywhere is that you have to give a shit. You just have to. Like, that's the way this all works. Like, if you can care, if you understand that what you're selling this person, whether if they need it and they can use your product, whatever it is, it's going to come back to you tenfold for all the times that you recognize, hey, I actually don't think you're a great fit for what we're selling. If you can be the salesperson that says that and doesn't just try to sell to meet your commission or whatever it might be, it's going to come back to you tenfold. So we could do 2 hours on sales. So let's pivot from sales a little bit, because it's one of my favorite things. I love the psychology behind it. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about. But let's move to just because I've spent so much of your time here at this point. Hopefully energy is going up and not depleting too much here on a Friday. But you've shifted from Soapbox now to impact-driven brands. And with that, I imagine your role as CEO in the company is changing as well. I know mine has changed a lot over the past let's call it 6-7 years of hiring people and empowering others. What has been the biggest challenge in your growth as a CEO?
I mean, I think the biggest one was lack of experience. I think that was not knowing how important, design was, and not knowing that it wasn't just about getting product in the market. It was really about getting the right product in the market and how much easier that would be to build upon that success. I'd say the other big lesson that I've learned is hire great people. Hire great people. Hire people that inspire you, and then get out of their way. And then I think the other, fire bad people, and don't hold on.
That's the hard part.
Don't try to do improvement plans. Don't try to do that. If they're bad, they're bad. And it could be that they are great. They're just bad with you, and that you're the problem. And I've let go my fair share of people. But I think the other thing is how you let someone go is possibly the most important role, and how you do that, and how you do that with dignity, and how you keep their dignity. Now, granted, if someone steals from the company, there is not all this need for extra care, right? But if in 2017 we were in a really bad spot. It was the worst year of the company. It was the worst year for the company ever, and we had to lay off half of our team. And I basically went to them and I said, "This is not your fault. This is my fault. This is a leader's fault." But unfortunately, also a part of the leader's fault is that I gotta fix it. I gotta, and this was, so what we did is, we really went to bat with all of our people. We got on the horn and called other, companies that we respected and said, "Hey, I know, I really trust this person, and they're a part of our team, and they're leaving us, not because they want to, and not because they're bad, but because we can't afford them." And then, how do you take care of someone when unfortunately it's not their fault, and or even if it's not a good fit, right? But they're still a good person. It's like saying, "Hey, we had an intern. It was a 3-month internship and required so much upskilling on those basic, just in office practices that after a week, I sat him down and I was like, 'Hey, this ain't gonna work out because we are gonna. There's gonna be so much basic level manners that we're going to have to get you through, that we're going to fail you. And it's going to be incredibly frustrating for you, and it's going to be incredibly frustrating for us. So this is not the right fit. It's not your fault. We're not set up with an intern program to really take care of you at the level that you need to be taken care of."
Yeah. I love that. I find your culture incredible, and it's something that at 12.5 we try to we talk about. One of the things we've said in the past is we cultivate the passion of our people, and the people are not only our clients but the people here at 12.5. So we invest in them as they come in, we invest in them while they're here, and then the most important part, which you just said, is we invest in them as they're leaving. And that's if they find something new, if they want to start their own business, or if we have to unfortunately let them go, which I think is a very, very difficult thing. Letting somebody go is difficult enough, but then trying to go above and beyond because they're going to take it bad either way. It's going to feel bad in the moment for them. And you're going to try to soothe it with some of these things you're doing. But I think over time, I've talked to some people who have left the company. Over time, they go, "Wow, that was a really awesome way they didn't say it that way, but awesome way you let me go. You gave us an executive coach, or you gave us found a recruiter for us. In your case, you found them actual jobs. I mean, what kind of company does that? Not very many."
Well, it also helps when you're smaller, right? It's not like we're in a far off office that says we need to cut off by 5%. But yeah. Right. This
it's interesting.
I am thoroughly grateful for all of these wonderful questions. Sincerely.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And I've taken a lot of your time, and you're so fun to chat with. So I only have a few more here that I want to share with the team, or share with the listeners, I should say. We've talked a lot about culture and your team, and, even taking care of them when they leave. You're growing as a CEO. Sounds like you're in the mode of empowering others rather than doing the day-to-day. That to me was one of the biggest challenges for me, was realizing that I have to get out of the way. Was there any specific moment that you realized that, or did it kind of just come slowly?
Oh man. I think there's still parts of the business that I'm an operator. I'm becoming less of that. I think I'm a big believer of like the leader should take out the trash. So,
stuff the envelopes.
just never be above it. Right. Like it's not that right. should be your daily job. Right. That's a very terrible use of your resource, but you should never be too high up in or look at it as beneath you. So I'm getting there.
Gets back to that grace and power you talked about.
You got it.
I find the buy one get one model very interesting. I find I find moving from soap to impact driven brands interesting. You're into the food market now. What other segments can you apply your model to?
Impact driven brands is all about how do we create better for you products that are more sustainably packaged that also give back. And if they know those three criteria are satisfied, then we're interested. But practically speaking, there's so many categories that we do not want to compete in. Like we do not want to compete in beverage. That is really difficult. We do not want to compete in frozen. That's even more difficult. There's just so many different things that we know about consumer product goods now that like we're like. But I think also like we're taking a little bit of a pause with how much we have to chew and how much we have to grow with each of our brands. So I don't think we're going to be on the acquisition train anytime soon. Interesting.
That's a thoughtful answer. Mainly because I think most entrepreneurs' answers there are grow for the sake of growth. And sometimes it's just maintain to be better at what we do really well. Speaking to that a little bit is, you guys were early in the buy one, get one move or give one movement, I should say, the buy one, give one movement. And you're a leader in that space now, and there are so many different entrants. This might be a weird question, but what is something you wish they'd stop doing, some of your competitors in that space?
I don't. I think more companies that care about giving back is a good thing. Like 100%.
I like it.
I want more people to be B Corps. I want more people to, have to go through that rigorous audit process where you got to ask yourself some really tough questions about like, well, how do we treat our team members? How do we treat the community? How are we a good shepherd of the resources that we use? And how are we a good steward of the environment? Bring it on. That is awesome.
I love it. Okay, well, cool. Well, let's wrap up. I have probably 15 other questions that I'm not going to ask you. Maybe we can do it on another time. Maybe I'll take you out for a drink and we'll do that. But no, that's me writing too many questions. All right, so these are the final questions. Fast four. These are really quick answers. No, you don't give a lot of thought. Whatever comes to your brain. Other than what you're doing right now, what profession or business would you like to take a stab at?
I would really love being a doctor.
Doctor, cool. Interesting. It kind of goes with your ethos a little bit, giving back, teaching, all those kind of things.
I would have loved him in a doctor.
Well, having a brother-in-law who is a doctor, be glad you went into what you went into.
Noted.
Noted. Noted. What's something you're terrible at?
Hand-eye coordination. Absolutely terrible. My friends joke about it. We just created a game called Tequila Toss, which basically was like we just tossed the ball back and forth. And when you dropped the ball, you had to take a shot of tequila. I'm pretty sure that was one of the most intoxicated nights of my life. It's terrible.
Yeah. You were drunk first, I bet.
See,
no doubt.
The hard part about the game is the more you miss, the more you drink, the more you drink, the more you miss. It's awful. Yeah. It's a very vicious circle.
Yeah, and you're starting off
handicapped.
You're starting off with a half deck of cards there. Yeah.
I wouldn't even give myself that many. But
Yeah. Interesting. What book or documentary are you reading or watching right now, if any?
There's a decent amount. It's funny. I'm rereading this, so we'll just stay with that, with what customers want.
Yeah, there you go.
You said it earlier. I think it's great.
Yeah. Are you a big rereader as well?
On the ones that matter. So I only probably reread, about 10% of what I read.
I have about 4 or 5 that at the start of every year, they just got to be read. Like, it's just like, food for the soul a little bit.
Ooh, send me that list.
What's the, this is the last.
I'm dead serious. Please send me that list.
I will. Absolutely. I keep a very specific book list of what I've read and whether they're good or not to me. Not that anybody really cares, but I'd be happy to share that with you. Last question, and you can look at your phone or computer if you need to. What's the last thing you listened to on Spotify or Apple Music?
Bloomberg.
Look at you.
I know.
Such a good business entrepreneur.
Such a nerd. Nerd. Yeah.
Such a nerd.
I just think, so this is a great note to go out to. I love going to the gym every morning, right? Really love it. It's, my lifting partner and I joke that it's our meditation, which we call meditation. So apologies. If you listener have made it to here, your reward is a really bad pun. So
I love it.
I love listening to the news while lifting, which is really strange because you hear a bunch of other people what's going on in their headphones, and it's rap or hardcore metal or super high tempo pop or techno or whatever. And I'm over here and they're the yield curve.
Yield curve.
I'm just doing a max set, and I'm like, and they're just interest rate.
I know. I have a buddy who listens to classical music while he lifts.
That's dope.
And I just find it fascinating.
I mean,
I'm very interesting way to go about it. Well, David, thank you so much for the time today. This has been super fun and educational. I hope our listeners got something out of it. I know I did. Where can people find Soapbox, Impact Driven Brands, where can we find you online and all that kind of stuff?
Totally. So, Soapbox is available at Walmart. It's available at Target. It's available at Rite Aid, Wegmans, pretty much any grocery store in the United States. Amazon, super easy, one click. And then same thing, Good Nest is available at a Target. Will be available in a lot more stores next year. Bushwick is available on Amazon, on its own website, but you can just Google Soapbox shampoo or Soapbox body wash and you'll find us, or Bushwick or Good Nest or, any of the brands that we have the privilege of growing and building. And it's been such a pleasure to be on here, Ryan. Thank you so much for doing so much thoughtful research, and your humor and your thoughtful questions has just really made my day.
I appreciate it, man. Well, congrats on all the success, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thanks,
Take
man.
care.